Hello out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another Gamer Stars discussion. And this time we're going to be talking about Remnant 2 and the Xbox Series S, which has now become the new Wii U. There's a few things I need to talk about when it comes down to this because I've seen a lot of recent social media bashing for the Xbox Series S. Now, there were some people who were bashing it immediately upon release. That was expected. That kind of happens with every platform. There's someone that's going to bash it. There's people running this narrative that it is holding back Xbox. Now, I've always realized that, one platform not having the same exact capabilities as another platform isn't holding it back. But I'll get to why that is in a little bit. What I'm going to do right now is just explain what I did to get an overall understanding of what is going on with the parts or the minimum system requirements for Remnant 2. Now, I'm not looking at my notes, so I don't know exactly what those system requirements are right offhand right now. I may just go ahead on the video version of this, post the images up so people can see it. And maybe people can do the same thing I did, which was sit down, list out the important parts there, which were the CPU, GPU, the RAM, and the storage. That's what we had to take into account. Now, I know for a fact, based on what I researched, even though I can't say for sure what specific version of the parts that the Xbox Series S uses, they are customized parts. So what I did was look them up versus the lowest tier of that version of part for when it released. That's what I did. And then I did a comparison of that lowest part or lowest quality part versus what was the minimum requirements. Based on that, for the CPU and GPU, there should not be an issue for the Xbox Series S when it comes down to running Remnant 2. It should actually be able to run it pretty efficiently based on those parts. Now, obviously, depending on which version of it you got, 512 for storage, 512 gigabytes for storage, probably more like 300. But the RAM is where that would be the bottleneck. Because it just says 16 gigabytes of RAM for PC requirements. Now, I'm not a tech head. And I do know that 10 gigabytes is lower than 16 gigabytes. But since it wasn't specified the type of RAM, there may be wiggle room with that. I mean, you obviously know that they're not going to get the full 10 gigabytes of RAM because part of that's going to be delegated to the OS. However, different types of RAM have more or less lanes of throughput depending on the type of RAM it is. That's why I say there may be wiggle room. It's not going to be a lot of wiggle room, but there may be wiggle room. So, with that in mind, knowing that there are going to be machines that are built that have lower quality specs than the Xbox Series S. And they will very likely be able to run this game at the wanted 60 frames per second and potentially above 1080p. I'm going to call it a coding issue from Gearbox versus it being the particular platform. Now, somebody's going to say, Andre, how do you know that? History. History is how I know that. Because stuff like this happens, especially when developers need an excuse to say why they didn't put as much effort into something on a different platform. They're going to blame the platform. Again, this literally started, with the Wii it kind of was there, but with the Wii it was understandable. The gap between the Wii and the PS3 and Xbox 360 was far more vast. But even back then, when they really wanted to make it happen, they brought games to the Wii that were on the other platforms day and date. Hell, even then, they were still putting those games on the PS2. So it still was no excuse. But here's the worst part of this. What makes things far worse. You're building these games for PC, and you're building them to be able to be played on a machine with lower specs than the platform you say is the worst one that is bottlenecking you. So how is that the fault of the machine? That's what I want to know. How is that the fault of the machine? I don't think anybody sits down and thinks these things out. It's just the first response that comes up. Especially because there has been a culture from the industry to say these types of things. So when people see stuff like this, that's their immediate thought, is to go and blame the machine. The machine has not changed since it has been released. What has changed is people's work ethic and how they develop for those machines. And the sad thing is, and I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep going back to this, with the way Mark Cerny presented how the PS5 should have games developed for it, if the developers were developing games that way, even across the board, everything would work better. Because that's how the machines are actually designed. Their coding methods literally work against how the machines are designed. The coding methods currently do work for PC. You want to know why? Because PC in general has not changed. Yes, there are multitudes of different specs. Yes, the specs have gotten higher, but as a platform, in the overall, it hasn't changed. That's why that happens. So, here's one thing. Here's a little bit of a brain twister I want to give everybody. If a game is made to be able to run on a platform with lesser resources, how does that hold back the platforms with higher resources? Answer that question. How does that hold back the platforms with higher resources? I would really love to know, because that's a question that's been bugging the hell out of me, and no one knows the answer to that. You want to know why no one knows the answer? Because it doesn't. If anything, logically speaking, if it requires less resources, then it should be better on the platform with more resources. That's how logic works. If it takes me less effort to do something, then I am better at doing it. So, how do machines that require less resources hinder machines with more resources? How does that work? Or are we going to say that it's because the developer's vision isn't met? You want to know what also screws with the developer's vision? Censorship. That has nothing to do with the technical aspect of things. You want to know what else messes with the developer's vision? Pricing, time constraints, publishers. There's so many things that come into play before development even gets to where it's supposed to be, before the machine is even decided, that can hinder the developer's vision. I hate that excuse. And it's like people don't think. I'm not saying people aren't intelligent. I'm just saying they're not thinking. Because we've heard the same response over and over and over again. And I'm one of the few people that says, hold on, why do we keep hearing that response? Why do we keep hearing these regurgitated responses over and over and over again? Why do we keep getting told something can't be done just to find out, a year or two later it could have been done? It just took a little bit of extra effort. Or, hey, how about this? Why don't we start off with the system that requires the least amount of resources and then work our way up? Like logic dictates. Make the best game we can make on the platform that requires the least amount of resources, so that way when we translate it to machines that have more resources, there's more that we can add to it, make it more spectacular. People don't ever ask that. Why don't we ask the developers to do that? Why don't we ask the publishers to pay for that to be done? Why don't we ask them to not overblow their budgets and then get mad and angry at each other and get frustrated? And why don't we ask them to not push crunch time, which happens all the time, even if it's not being said right now? Why don't we ask them to clean up their code to make their games lighter, which means that they require less resources and they don't jam up our systems, and on top of that, makes them smaller so that they don't eat up as much storage? Why aren't we asking these things as the gaming community? Why are we not? Honest questions there. Why are we not? Why are we so enamored with having the quote-unquote best version of a game versus having a competent version of a game? Why are we so focused on bragging rights? Because they told us that's what we needed to be focused on? Start thinking. Start pulling apart the things that are being said. And this applies to things outside of gaming. It's just easier within the realm of gaming because it's not as serious as a focus I wouldn't say it's not as serious a focus. It's not as serious of a necessity for people's lives. If you can break it down in gaming, start questioning these things, you'll be able to do it throughout the rest of your life. You start questioning stuff like this, then you think more about things. You should not always jump to the first response that pops into your head. Unless that response says, what am I not being told? Because what are we not being told about what's going on with Remnant 2 development that makes it so difficult to run it well on the Xbox Series S when the system requirements are well beneath it? outside of the RAM, which again, I've already explained, because of the type of RAM, may have opened up a little bit of wiggle room. I'm not expecting it to run the exact same way as on the Series X and PS5. What I'm saying is, it shouldn't be getting treated like leftovers. Because I can tell you that is probably the bigger portion of the Xbox Series platform owners out there. So you mean to tell me you're going to treat your customer base like garbage? With the exception of the elite players, I guess? Which would be the people that paid for higher powered machines. No, you really wouldn't want to do that, because the people that pay for the, less resource heavy machines are your bigger, in a general sense, not completely, but they're your bigger base. They're your more important base. And that also bleeds back into my question earlier, of like, how is it that a machine with less resources holds back a machine with higher resources? Which even in their own, example, it doesn't show the Series S holding back the Series X. Because the Series X is getting everything that the PS5 gets. So how does the Series S then hold back the Series X? It does not. That's not how it works. That would be the equivalent of saying people with lower spec PCs are holding back every game from people with the highest spec PCs out there. That's exactly what you're saying. Or if, by comparison, people who have lower quality smartphones are holding back iPhone users and Samsung users because their smartphones are lower spec than theirs. It doesn't make sense. It literally just doesn't make any sense. So, I could be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong with this, but I could definitely be wrong. I could really, truly, heavily be wrong here. I just don't believe I'm wrong, because that's not what logically makes sense and what logically works. Again, I'm not infallible. Not infallible in the least. But hey, just take the time to think it through before running to the response that the game developers give us. And I think even the developers of Trine said something like this. And for as much as I love the Trine series, that's bullshit. As much as I love the Trine series, hearing a developer say that to me tells me they are looking for an excuse to not put the effort in. That's all it tells me. That's all it tells me. Because if you're giving yourself that excuse to not put the effort in, then that means at any point in time you can just say, well, fuck it. It is what it is. I'm just going to release a product that is subpar on purpose. And you're still going to buy it. Which I think is an issue that people have been having with Game Freak as of late. So, do we want to continue down that path? Do we want to continue down the path of, hey, let's let it be mediocre. Let's go ahead. Let's let it be mediocre. It's okay. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. you can give me your lukewarm ice cream. I'll eat it anyway. That's a hell of a context to put that in. I know that just made someone's stomach turn. I am so sorry. But it's just to the point of, and I've been saying this for a while, it's getting to the point where I'm not calling it laziness, because it takes a lot of work to develop these games. But if we're going to give the shortcut and say, well, hey, this can't be done with no explanation. I mean, literally no explanation. It's just, hey, it is what it is. We can't do anything else. That's it. Then when something truly becomes a lazy effort, we won't know the difference. It'll be like, oh, hey, I mean, they at least tried. They A+ because they attempted. So, I don't want to drag it on beyond what I have. If anybody could come up with the answer to that question, how the machine with less resources ends up holding back the machine with higher resources, I would love to know. Because I'm still fascinated by the fact that when it came down to The Witcher 3 and it coming to the Switch, the patches that were applied to the Switch version of the game to make sure it could run on the platform also got applied across the board, and it made it perform better on every other platform. I just want to know. Please tell me how the lower resource machine screws up the higher resource machine. I still need to know that. For all of PC gaming in general, I need to know that. But that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out, everybody. Thank you once again. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. And if you would like to support my efforts in creating content, please look up my book that is currently on Amazon for purchase. That is The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search Volume 1. I am currently working on Volume 2, and it would be highly appreciated. That way you could get something for you supporting me. Again, thank you very much. Peace out.